like once the bride and maid got it, she's like, and we just looked at the boyfriend. She goes, just started laughing.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. It's working. All right, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Can we please have roll call?
Chair Kevin Rooney.
Here.
Vice Chair Mario Maciel Jr.
Here.
Commissioner Edwin Borges.
Here.
Commissioner Edith Flores.
Here.
All right. Now's the time for public communications. Anyone that has anything to say that's not on the agenda can step forward. You have 3 minutes to speak. And please say your name and address. Seeing none, I'll close public communications. The cassette calendar. Can I have a motion to read it?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
You have to abstain because you will take a voice.
Okay. Those for?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it.
You abstain.
And I abstain because I was not present last month. Okay, and next we have public hearings.
That's it.
There we go. Honorable Chair, members of the Planning Commission. First of all, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I'm glad to be here at the City of Baldwin Park. I'd like to go ahead and let you know that our CEO, Shannon Yahtzee, was not able to make it today. He was going to make this presentation for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go through a presentation that was made to the public at 5 public workshops. And as I complete that, I'm going to turn it over to our Assistant City Attorney, Mr. Olivas, to present the staff report for this item. What you have before you is consideration of a code amendment to allow medical and adult cannabis cultivation, manufacturing, distribution uses within the city's industrial, commercial, and industrial zones. And as part of that, you're looking at a deletion of certain subsections that currently prohibit cannabis in the city, and the addition of a new chapter 127, which would allow cannabis cultivation, distribution, manufacturing. However, dispensaries, retail uses are not a part of this amendment. So just to make that clear. So just to start off, we have cannabis ordinances 1400 and 1401. First of all, as you've become aware over the last year or so, California voters have approved the legal use of cannabis. And the state is now prepared to issue licenses to various companies that cultivate and manufacture cannabis. What we're looking at tonight is to cultivate, manufacture, and transport cannabis products. Those are the items that are being looked at. Also testing labs to find the various strains of medical cannabis. But what's also being considered is the commercial cannabis, not just medical purposes, but also for recreational distribution. Cities will now have local control, and that's one of the reasons, we're coming before you today. Even though the state will be issuing the licenses, the cities will have the control of whether they allow these uses or not. So again, cities can choose to allow them or not allow them. And for the most part, right now, the majority of cities do not allow them. But there are a handful of them here in California that have gone forward with these, including the cities of Adelanto, Desert Hot Springs, Palm Springs, Linwood, and there's a few others that are coming on board with this. Baldwin Park is considering indoor only, and that is very important to notice because we are not looking at agricultural uses outside, like farming, etc. This would be strictly inside manufacturing facilities, so it would not be visible from the outside. And again, dispensaries are not being considered at this time. Now, one of the reasons the city looked at this, having these workshops, is, of course, the economic development opportunity, the creation of jobs, and the creation of revenue to the city's general fund through development agreements, which is what's being proposed as part of our code amendment. With jobs, we're looking at 500 to 600 jobs that could be created in our community alone. And through the development agreements, the residents of Baldwin Park would be considered first for employment. City could generate $3 to $4 million in city revenue. And this is just looking at the 10 licenses that are being proposed. Of course, we're right now identifying 10 because of the areas that we have within the industrial and commercial zones. City's general fund currently is $27.6 million. So as you can see, that is a very big amount of money coming into the general fund, comparable to adding a car dealership row in the city. City benefits, again, the funds can be used to improve the city's economic development fund or fund public safety programs too, which are a priority here in the city. And again, new jobs will provide that additional revenue in the city as well by providing those new customers within Baldwin Park retail centers. So that concludes my presentation. At this point, before we have the questions and answers, I'd like to turn it over to our Assistant City Attorney to give you a synopsis of the staff report. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, good evening. What you have before you tonight is a legislative act on your behalf. In other words, you will be recommending this ordinance 1400 and 1401 to the City Council should you approve the resolution before you this evening. What the two ordinances do are they amend Table 153.050.020 to allow medical and adult cannabis cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution uses within the industrial, commercial, and industrial zones with a development agreement. It deletes certain portions of the municipal code that currently ban the cultivation and manufacturing of cannabis. And it adds Chapter 127, which is the long ordinance you had in your package, full of regulations and rules, which I will go over briefly at a later time. According to the California Environmental Quality Act, this project is exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines 15061B3, because if you recommend this to the City Council this evening, no project will actually be approved. They would all come later on during a licensing period and with a development agreement going to City Council. So it's exempt at this time, but in the future we will look at environmental effects to the community. This has been duly published in the newspaper and the San Gabriel Examiner 10 days before this meeting. We've had 5 outreach meetings with over 100 people attending that went over the presentation that Mr. Romo presented, and other speakers, including the interim police chief, Amy Harbin, Robert Tafoya, and various industry leaders and experts on cannabis. I should point out that none of the speakers at any of these public meetings voiced negative attitude towards this. There was only one person who expressed some concerns, and his questions were answered. The legal history of cannabis use, I won't go into the detail. It's in your staff report. It began in 1996 with the Compassionate Use Act, and that legalized medical marijuana. I'll jump forward to Proposition 64, which the voters passed in November of 2016 to allow adult use, or what we call recreational cannabis. After that, the most pertinent law was SB 94, which was signed by the governor. That enacted the Medical and Adult Use Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act. What it did basically was it took medical cannabis and it took adult use recreational cannabis, and it melded them together into one regulatory law. That's what we are basing our Chapter 127 on, is the MAU CRSA, which was signed into law in June of this year. Besides changing the land use designations in the land use chart that I discussed, we are looking at a regulatory Chapter 127, which would, and for the record, I'm going to read out everything it does. For example, no manufacturing or cultivation site will be located within 600 feet of a school, daycare center, or youth center. No manufacturing or cultivation site will be within 50 feet of a residential zone. All manufacturing and cultivation sites will be limited to certain city zones, the industrial and the industrial commercial. All manufacturing and cultivation will occur in closed, locked structures. All manufacturing and cultivation sites and operations therein and all equipment must be in compliance with state and local laws, including all building, electrical, and fire codes. The use and storage of hazardous materials, flammable liquid gas, and combustible materials must comply with the fire code. All manufacturing and cultivation sites are required to be fire sprinkled under the fire code. From a public right-of-way, there should be no evidence of the manufacture or cultivation of cannabis except for any authorized signage. All transportation of cannabis must comply with state law. There are high standards written into the ordinance that define high moral character and good cause for denying of a permit. There is a requirement for security cameras to be included and maintained on sites. Alarm systems are required for all sites. Armed guards are also required for all sites. Requirements that licenses implement a system to track the cultivation and manufacturing of cannabis in order to prevent the licensee from diverting or transporting cannabis to any location not authorized by state law. For example, you can't cross state lines with cannabis grown in California. Video surveillance is required, and they have to keep the tape for 90 days, and it's subject to inspection by our police department. All applicants must execute an agreement indemnifying the city from any claims. Requirements that facilities maintain insurance in amounts acceptable to the city. Require the CEO or our police chief to inspect the facilities at any reasonable time. We control and regulate noxious odors. And finally, we provide the city with wide powers to summarily suspend or revoke permits or disqualify an applicant from the registration process should they not follow the rules and regulations. The reason why we are fast-tracking this process at this point, although we did have 5 public sessions, is because if we do not approve licenses prior to January 1st, 2018, the state has control over citing cultivation and manufacturing. So we want to take advantage of this time before the beginning of the year to approve a regulation of cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution so that the state does not take control over our permitting rights. Also, if we grant permits prior to the beginning of the year, they take precedence in terms of being processed by the state. The state, if you do not have a license, will take from 12 to 24 months to process their license. So we want to get, if this is passed, we want to get in line so that we are first to be considered for these licenses. Remember, you need a local license, like from the city, and you need a state license. Of course, Mr. Romo discussed the revenue to the city that's possible. All in all, staff recommends that the Planning Commission, upon open the public hearing and following the public hearing, adopt Resolution PC 17-13 entitled A Resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Baldwin Park recommending that the City Council approve and adopt an amendment to the City's Municipal Code, Table 153.050.020, allowing medical and adult cannabis cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution uses, deleting subsections 153.120.330C and D from the Municipal Code, and the addition of Chapter 127, Title 11 of the Municipal Code. Locations, all industrial and industrial commercial zones. The applicant in this situation is the City of Baldwin Park. This is case number AZC-183. That concludes my presentation. Staff is now open for questions.
All right. Any questions from any of the commissioners? I just have 2 questions. The smell, is it going to be confined to the warehouse? Because I know cannabis has this strong smell nowadays. You could smell it from blocks away. Are they going to confine that in the warehouse?
That's correct, sir. The buildings will be required to have filtration systems so that when they come in for their tenant improvements, or if it happens to be new construction, also that'll be part of the mitigation. So absolutely, that will be part. Like any other manufacturing use, it will have to meet those standards to avoid any public nuisance, including odor.
Okay. And also with the armed guards, are those going to be through Baldwin Park, or how are those going to be supplied? They're going to hire them themselves?
They're going to have their own security, correct, but there are, I think, plenty of units in this area, this region, to choose from.
Right. Part of the fees will be to mitigate the impact on the police department so that the police can hire additional officers to help supervise this process.
Sounds good. Okay. So no more questions from the commissioners?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Who determined that 600 feet was adequate as far as the distance between the facility manufacturing and the schools or daycares?
That's pursuant to state law. That's where we got the 600 feet from.
Okay.
And also the 50 feet from the residence, that's also state law.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? We will now open it to public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Seeing no interest, I'll close the public hearing. And now
More questions?
any more questions?
Yes, I have another question.
Okay.
Would it be possible to include in this ordinance that there has to be a POS system for sales and verification of board equalization records to be able to match and see that the sales that are being produced through this these facilities are accurate?
Yes, we already have the right to inspect their books,
Right.
but we could add that as a condition.
Okay.
And keeping in mind, sir, just for clarification, right now the generation of revenue is going to be based on the canopy size of how many plants they have, as opposed to an excise tax, which is something the city could look at a later time, but that would be something that would have to go to the ballot if they were basing it on the actual sales.
Yeah, Commissioners, I think this issue is a no-brainer. I've always felt over the years that Baldwin Park was behind the eight ball on a lot of these issues, waiting for other cities to make decisions and then kind of see the fallout and where to go from there. So I think the city needs to grab the bull by the horns. The positive impact on public safety, police programs, jobs, just far outweighs any negatives in this case.
My only concern in regards to this is that I feel that studies haven't been truly made in comparison to, let's say, Colorado, who's been the first one to actually implement this particular ordinance. My only thing would be if we can add restaurants as well to where school, daycare, and youth centers are at, so that they're also included in that part. Keep it.
We can certainly put that as a recommendation to City Council.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we'll take our vote. Motion.
I move to approve the resolution PC 17-14.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Can we get clarification? Is it, my staff report says 17-13. This one, the original says 13 as well.
Okay.
So would you accept that amendment to your motion?
Yes.
Okay.
All those opposed? Seeing none? Passes 4-0. Sorry. Now it's closed. You made me freeze a little at the end. Oh, no. All right. Seeing no more. Huh? Oh, any comments by anybody, including commissioners?
None besides the fact, just a little concerned about what the outcome might be in regards to this, because a lot of people are saying that cannabis is the gateway to all the other drugs. So that's my main concern. We'll see what the outcome is, but...
All right, well...
You know, that's another... that's take. I totally understand that, and maybe some of the monies can be used for programs,
I hope so.
for rehabilitation and whatnot. So I'm sure that'll be included.
Certainly it can be included in a development agreement that they engage in public outreach of that nature. We can add that to the list of comments to the City Council.
Okay.
On another note, I see that the development over at LA Fitness, they're moving on those stores, Coffee Bean and Jersey Mike's and Waba. So really excited to see that growing. I'm a member there at LA Fitness and the family, just excited to have our own gym. And, you see that from the freeway, and it's just a big hit in town.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll motion.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney.
Do I go?
You're all nervous today, man. What's going on?
I'm nervous. The last meeting I couldn't make it because of medical issues, so it's been 2 months.
That's right.
And then we got we got Miss Cruz over there. That was to be amazing.